stay pushing every day.
You think so?
You know, never post nothing.
I accidentally walked in. I saw it.
Yeah.
Crazy.
$8 million in jail. I got a real estate portfolio over $2 million.
There is a chain that exists in YoungBoy Never Broke Again's world that you cannot buy. You cannot ask for it. You cannot negotiate for it. And most people who are breathing right now will never, ever receive one. The gravedigger chain. And before you think this is just another rapper flexing jewelry, let me stop you right there. Because this chain has a meaning so dark, so specific, and so deeply personal to YoungBoy that once you understand what it actually represents, you're going to look at every single person wearing one completely differently. Because the rumor on the streets, the talk online, the whispers from people inside YoungBoy's circle, they all point to the same thing. This chain isn't given to friends. It isn't given to yes men. It isn't given to people who are close to him. It is reportedly given to people who have done something so serious, so irreversible, so permanent, that they've literally earned the title of gravedigger. And today we are going all the way in. We're talking about where this chain came from, what it means, who designed it, why YoungBoy calls it his favorite piece, and most importantly, every single person he has reportedly given one to and the story behind why they received it. By the end of this video, you are going to understand why this chain might be the most significant symbol in all of street rap right now. So stay locked in because it only gets deeper from here. Now, before we get into the recipients and the dark stories behind each one, we need to establish who YoungBoy is and why a chain like this even makes sense coming from him specifically. Because this isn't a random gimmick. This isn't a marketing stunt. This chain is an extension of YoungBoy's entire identity, his entire worldview, and the life he has lived since before most people his age were even thinking about anything serious. NBA YoungBoy, born Kentrell Deshaun Gaulden on October 20th, 1999 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, came into this world in one of the most statistically dangerous cities in America. Baton Rouge consistently ranks among the highest per capita murder rates in the entire United States. And YoungBoy didn't grow up in the safe part. He grew up surrounded by poverty, street activity, and loss. The kind of loss that doesn't just hurt, it hardens. He lost close people around him from a very young age. Friends, associates, people he came up with, gone. And unlike a lot of artists who reference street life from a distance, YoungBoy lived it, survived it, and carried it with him into every single thing he creates. That's important context, because the gravedigger chain didn't come from a place of fantasy. It came from a place of real experience. And to understand why he created it and who he gives it to, you have to first understand that YoungBoy's relationship with death is not performative, it is personal. To really understand this, we gotta go back and trace the full origin of the chain, when it appeared, who made it, and what sparked YoungBoy to create something this specific and this dark in the first place. Let's rewind to the period when YoungBoy was really cementing his lane in the rap game, roughly between 2018 and 2020. By this point, YoungBoy was already one of the hottest artists in the country. His streaming numbers were breaking records, his YouTube views were unmatched for an independent artist of his profile, and his fan base, the NBA Never Broke Again faithful, was one of the most ride-or-die fan bases in music. But while the music was exploding, YoungBoy's personal life and the world around him was still operating under the same rules it always had. The streets don't care how many streams you have. The streets don't care about chart positions. And for YoungBoy, that was never lost on him. He never let success disconnect him from where he came from or the people who were in the trenches with him before any of the fame arrived. It was during this era that the gravedigger chain began to take shape, not just as a piece of jewelry, but as a concept. YoungBoy has always been someone who attaches deep personal meaning to symbols. If you look at his tattoos, his music, his imagery, everything means something, nothing is random, and the gravedigger chain falls directly in line with that philosophy. It was reportedly crafted by one of the elite jewelers who services top-tier rap artists, built with an extraordinary level of detail, a custom piece designed to look exactly like what its name suggests, a grave, a tombstone, the imagery of death rendered in diamonds and gold. It is, by every account from people who have seen it up close, one of the most striking custom chains in rap. Not because of its price tag, though the price tag is reported to be significant, but because of what it communicates the moment you look at it. YoungBoy has referred to this chain in interviews and through social media as one of his absolute favorites, and when you understand why, it makes complete sense. Every other chain in rap is about status, wealth, success. Look what I have, look what I built, look how far I came. The gravedigger chain communicates something entirely different. It communicates identity. It communicates a relationship with death that is intimate and unflinching. YoungBoy has spoken, both in his music and in candid moments, about how death has always been close to him, how he has had to make peace with mortality in a way that most people never do. And the gravedigger chain is the physical embodiment of that reality. It is him saying, without words, I know what this life costs, I know what the game requires, and I am not afraid of it. That is what makes the chain his favorite. It is not the most expensive thing he owns. It is not the flashiest. It is the most honest. It is the most him. And that honesty is exactly what makes it so powerful, and exactly what makes giving one away mean so much. Now here's where it gets crazy, because the chain itself being significant is one thing, but the moment YoungBoy started giving them out, that is when the internet exploded. That is when people started paying close attention, and that is when the real story began. See, in rap, giving someone a chain is a statement. It has been since the early days of hip-hop culture. When a rapper gives another person a chain, especially a custom chain, a one-of-one type piece, it communicates alliance, loyalty, and a level of trust that goes beyond words. We have seen it throughout the culture. Bosses gift chains to their most trusted people. It is a crown being placed on someone's head in the language of the streets. But what YoungBoy is doing with the gravedigger chain is reportedly something on an entirely different level, because this isn't just about alliance or loyalty. This is about a specific type of loyalty, a specific type of action. And that is what has people talking, debating, and theorizing all over the internet. The rumor, and let's be clear, these are rumors. These are things circulating in the streets and online, because nobody in YoungBoy's inner circle is going to sit down and give you a formal interview about this. The rumor is that the gravedigger chain is given specifically to people who have proven themselves in the most extreme way possible. People who have, as the streets put it, stood on business. People who have shown that when things get real, when the moment comes that requires somebody to step up and do something that most people would run from, they don't run. They handle it. And because of that, they earn the title that the chain represents. They become, in YoungBoy's world, grave diggers. Now let's talk about the specific names that have come up, because this is where the story gets documented, where people started connecting dots, and where the real conversation about this chain lives. The first name you have to talk about when discussing the gravedigger chain is Lil Tim. And if you know anything about YoungBoy's circle and the stories that have circulated around it, then you already know that Lil Tim's name carries a lot of weight and a lot of history. Lil Tim has been identified by people online, by people who follow YoungBoy closely, and by commentary from various figures in the Baton Rouge street world as one of YoungBoy's most trusted and most dangerous affiliates. And when photos and footage emerged of Lil Tim wearing a gravedigger chain, people were not surprised. They were, however, very vocal about what they believed that chain represented. The term that keeps coming up when people talk about Lil Tim and others in YoungBoy's circle who have been seen with the chain is crash dummy. Now, if you're not familiar with that term in this context, let me break it down for you. In street culture, a crash dummy is someone who is willing to go all the way, no hesitation, no second thoughts, no backing down when they are called upon. It is not an insult. In this context, it is almost a badge of honor. It means you are the person that when everything goes sideways, when the situation escalates to a point where most people tap out, you don't tap out. You are the one who pulls up. You are the one who handles it. And in YoungBoy's world, being that person is reportedly what earns you a gravedigger chain. People online have drawn connections between certain violent incidents tied to YoungBoy's camp over the years and the individuals who were later seen wearing the chain. Now, we are not in the business of making direct accusations or stating things as facts that have not been proven in a court of law. What we can say is that the pattern people are pointing to is consistent. The people who end up with a gravedigger chain around their neck are, without exception, people who have been described by those around them as individuals who move without fear and who have been in serious situations and come out the other side still standing and still loyal. Lil Tim, by all accounts from people who know the Baton Rouge situation, fits that description entirely. And the fact that he is one of the more visible recipients of the chain has made him something of a symbol himself within the conversation about what the gravedigger chain represents. But Lil Tim is not the only name in this conversation. Not even close. Let's talk about Herm, because Herm is another individual from YoungBoy's circle whose name comes up consistently when people are discussing who holds a gravedigger chain and why. Herm has been seen with YoungBoy on multiple occasions. He is part of the Never Broke Again family in a real, active way. Not just a peripheral associate, but someone who is clearly trusted and clearly close. And when people talk about Herm in the context of the Gravedigger chain, the conversations are very similar to the ones they have about Lil Tim. That this is not someone who is around YoungBoy because of the music or the fame or the money. This is someone who was there before all of that, or who proved himself during it in ways that go far beyond just being a hype man or a loyal friend. This is someone who, according to the narrative that circulates in the streets and online, has genuinely earned his place through action. The backstory that gets whispered around Herm is consistent with the overall theme of the chain, that he is someone who, when situations get real, when YoungBoy's enemies make moves, when the people around YoungBoy are in danger, when the moment calls for someone to step up and not flinch, Herm is reportedly one of those people who does not flinch. And in YoungBoy's world, that is the currency that matters above all else. Not money, not clout, not social media presence. Action. Real, undeniable, proven under fire action. And so the Gravedigger chain around Herm's neck, according to those who know the situation, is not decoration. It is a receipt. Then there is Ben 10. And Ben 10 is a name that, depending on how deep you are in the NBA YoungBoy world, either you know immediately or you are about to learn something significant. Ben 10 is another individual who has been identified as a recipient of the Gravedigger chain, and his story follows the same pattern. He is described by people in the know as someone who is not just associated with YoungBoy, he is someone who is thorough, someone who has demonstrated that his loyalty is not conditional, someone who has been in situations that tested him and who came through those situations on the other side with his loyalty to YoungBoy intact and his reputation as someone who moves without hesitation fully established. The name Ben 10 itself carries some connotations in street culture. It is a name that suggests someone who operates at a high level, someone who is serious, someone who you do not want to be on the wrong side of. And the fact that YoungBoy reportedly gave him a Gravedigger chain is, in the context of everything we've discussed, a very specific kind of acknowledgement. It is YoungBoy saying, without saying it directly, I see you. I know what you've done. I know what you represent. And this chain around your neck is proof that I know. Here's where it gets real, because Ben 10 is part of a pattern. And that pattern is what is making people across the internet, across the streets, across hip-hop, Twitter, and YouTube, and all the places where this conversation is happening, pay very close attention, because it is not random. The people who receive this chain are not random. They are specifically selected. They are specifically evaluated. And the criteria for evaluation is reportedly as dark as the chain's name suggests. Now let's zoom out for a second and talk about the broader implications of what we're looking at here. Because when you lay all of this out, the meaning of the chain, YoungBoy's personal relationship with the concept it represents, and the specific individuals who have reportedly received one, a very clear picture begins to form. YoungBoy Never Broke Again has, intentionally or not, created the most exclusive and the most meaningful honor system in street rap. Other artists have chains they give out. Other artists have tattoos that represent their crew. Other artists have symbols they use to mark loyalty. But none of them carry the specific weight that the Gravedigger chain carries, because none of them are so explicitly, so unambiguously tied to a specific type of action and a specific level of commitment. This chain is not for the people who are ride or die in the general sense. This chain is reportedly for the people who have literally dug graves. Whether that is meant metaphorically or literally is something that only the people inside that circle fully understand. But the implication is clear, and that implication is what makes this chain unlike anything else in the culture. Think about it from YoungBoy's perspective. Here is a man who has faced federal charges, who has been through multiple legal situations, who has had people around him killed, who has been involved in incidents that most people who grew up in comfortable circumstances cannot even conceptualize. For YoungBoy, loyalty is not an abstract concept. Loyalty has been tested in real time, under real consequences on multiple occasions. And the people who stood beside him during those moments, who didn't run, who didn't flip, who didn't turn their back when things got dangerous, those are the people who exist in a category that YoungBoy apparently decided needed its own symbol. And so the Gravedigger chain was born. This is important because it reframes the entire conversation about YoungBoy's inner circle. When people look at the people around him and say, why does YoungBoy keep these people close? Why does he trust them so completely? The Gravedigger chain is the answer. It is the most visible marker of who has actually proven themselves in the specific, uncompromising way that YoungBoy requires. It is the seal of approval from a man who does not give those out lightly. But here's what really went down when the conversation about this chain started going mainstream. And this is the part that really made things escalate in the discourse. When videos and photos started surfacing of multiple people in YoungBoy's circle wearing the chain, fans and commentators started connecting dots between the chain recipients and various incidents that had occurred in and around YoungBoy's world over the years. Incidents where enemies were addressed, incidents where people who had crossed YoungBoy or threatened his people faced consequences. And in almost every case where those connections were being drawn, the person at the center of the connection was someone who either had been seen with a gravedigger chain or would later be seen with one. Now, let's be careful here. Correlation is not causation. The fact that someone in YoungBoy's circle has been involved in a serious incident and also wears a gravedigger chain does not definitively prove that the chain was given as a reward for that incident. YoungBoy himself has not publicly confirmed the specific criteria for chain distribution. Nobody in his official camp has sat down and laid out a manifesto explaining exactly what earns you a gravedigger. But the consistency of the pattern, the fact that without exception, every documented recipient of this chain is someone described in terms that align with the crash dummy narrative, is hard to dismiss. And in hip-hop culture, in street culture, this kind of coded communication has always existed. Artists and their circles have always communicated through symbols, through imagery, through the things they don't say as much as the things they do. The gravedigger chain is one of the most effective pieces of coded communication in recent memory. It says everything without saying anything, it rewards without acknowledging, it marks without labeling. It is a masterpiece of street symbolism, whether that was intentional or simply the natural result of YoungBoy operating authentically within his world. Fast forward to the present day, and the conversation around the gravedigger chain has only grown. Social media, particularly platforms like Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, have turned this chain into a subject of ongoing analysis and discussion. Every time a new person is spotted with one, the internet erupts. Every time YoungBoy posts and someone in the background has a gravedigger chain visible, people start screenshotting, clipping, and building theories. The chain has taken on a life of its own in the culture. It has become a symbol that transcends YoungBoy's music, though his music remains the primary vehicle through which his world reaches the public. And what is particularly fascinating about all of this is how it aligns with YoungBoy's overall image and approach to his career. YoungBoy has never been an artist who chases mainstream approval. He has never softened his edges to appeal to a broader audience. He has never pretended to be something he is not. And the gravedigger chain is perfectly consistent with that approach. It is not designed for public consumption. It is not a PR move. It is not calculated to generate buzz, though it absolutely does. It is simply YoungBoy doing what YoungBoy always does, which is operating according to his own internal code and letting the rest of the world make of it what they will. That authenticity is a huge part of why his fan base is so devoted. People can feel when something is real, and the gravedigger chain is real. It is not a prop. It is not a costume. It is a genuine expression of a genuine value system, one that most people observing from the outside may not agree with or condone, but one that is undeniably consistent, undeniably sincere, and undeniably YoungBoy. Now let's talk about what the receiving of this chain means to the people who get it, because we have talked about YoungBoy's perspective, his intentions, and the symbolism behind the chain. But what about the people on the other side of that exchange? What does it mean to receive a gravedigger chain from NBA YoungBoy? Think about it from the perspective of someone like Lil Tim, or Herm, or Ben 10. These are people who exist in a world where loyalty and respect are the ultimate currencies, where the opinion of someone like YoungBoy, someone who has proven himself, someone who has survived what he has survived, someone who has built what he has built, carries more weight than almost anything else. To have that person look at you, evaluate you, and decide that you have earned the highest symbol of trust and acknowledgement that he has to offer, that is not a small thing. That is everything. That is validation on the deepest possible level. That is being seen by the person whose opinion matters most and being told without ambiguity, you are one of us, not just in words, in diamonds and gold, in a permanent, visible, undeniable statement to everyone who sees you that you have been certified by the most certified person in the room. In the context of the world these individuals inhabit, that means something profound. It means you are protected. It means you are respected. It means you are identified to anyone who knows what the chain represents as someone who should not be tested, because the chain does not just say, YoungBoy trusts this person. The chain says, this person has done what it takes to earn that trust. And in the streets, those two things are very different. One is about relationships, the other is about capability. And the gravedigger chain communicates both simultaneously to everyone in the room. But here's what really makes this conversation complicated. And here's the part that no one really wants to engage with directly because it forces some uncomfortable questions. If the rumors are true, if the gravedigger chain is genuinely given to people who have committed acts of violence on behalf of YoungBoy or in defense of his world, then what are we really looking at here? Are we looking at a musician expressing himself creatively through symbolic jewelry? Or are we looking at something darker, something that has real-world consequences for real people? This is a question that does not have an easy answer, and we are not going to pretend that it does. The reality of YoungBoy's world, the reality of any world that operates at the intersection of extreme wealth and street life, is that it is complicated. It does not fit neatly into the categories that mainstream society uses to evaluate behavior. YoungBoy exists in a space where the rules are different, where the stakes are different, and where the measures of loyalty and respect are defined by experiences that most people observing from the outside have never had and will never have. That does not mean those rules are correct. It does not mean they should be glorified or celebrated without critical thought, but it does mean that dismissing them or reducing them to simple moral judgments misses the complexity of what is actually happening. What we can say with certainty is this: the gravedigger chain is one of the most significant and most revealing symbols in contemporary hip-hop culture. It is a window into how YoungBoy thinks, how he operates, what he values, and who he keeps close. And understanding it, even if you do not agree with what it represents, gives you a deeper understanding of one of the most influential and most discussed artists of his generation. Let's also talk about the music, because you cannot separate the gravedigger chain from YoungBoy's discography. His music has always been the primary place where he processes and communicates his reality. And the themes that define the gravedigger chain, death, loyalty, standing on business, the cost of the life he lives, those themes run through virtually everything he has ever recorded. From his earliest mixtapes to his most recent releases, YoungBoy has always rapped about death with a specificity and an intimacy that goes beyond typical hip-hop bravado. He is not rapping about death as an abstract threat or a tool for intimidation. He is rapping about death as something he has been close to, something he has watched take people he loved, something he carries with him every day. Songs where he talks about losing people, about the constant threat of violence, about the reality that the life he lives could end at any moment. These are not just artistic choices. They are autobiography, and the gravedigger chain is the physical, wearable extension of that autobiography. When you listen to YoungBoy's music through the lens of the gravedigger chain, certain moments hit differently. Certain lines, certain references, certain emotional peaks in his delivery take on new meaning. Because you understand that he is not just rapping, he is documenting, he is archiving, he is leaving a record of a world that most people will only ever see through his music and through symbols like the gravedigger chain. His music has also consistently referenced his loyalty to the people around him and his expectations of loyalty in return. YoungBoy has made it very clear, both in song and in his public persona, that betrayal is something he does not tolerate. That disloyalty is one of the few things that truly breaks him. And so the gravedigger chain can also be understood as the inverse of that. Not just a symbol of loyalty proven, but a symbol of loyalty that has been tested in the most extreme way and not broken. These are the people who, when the test came, when the pressure was applied, when it would have been easier and safer to step back, they stepped forward. And for YoungBoy, that is sacred. Now, according to multiple sources and people who have observed the situation closely, the circle of gravedigger chain recipients is reportedly very small. This is not something YoungBoy gives out freely. This is not a participation trophy. The people who have been confirmed or strongly rumored to have received one can be counted, and each name carries its own story, its own incident, its own proof. The exclusivity of the chain is part of its power. If YoungBoy gave gravedigger chains to 20 people, it would mean something different. The fact that the circle is small, that each recipient has to have done something specific and serious enough to stand out even in a world full of serious people, is what keeps the chain meaningful. This also tells you something about YoungBoy as a leader, because to maintain that exclusivity, You have to be willing to say no. You have to be willing to see someone who is loyal, someone who is around, someone who is seemingly qualified and still say, not yet, or you have not done enough, or your situation is not the same as the others. That kind of discernment, that kind of standard setting, is part of what makes YoungBoy such a compelling figure to study. Not just as an artist, but as someone who has built and maintained a genuine circle of trust in one of the most trust-deficient environments that exists. The broader conversation about the gravedigger chain also raises questions about hip-hop culture and how we engage with artists whose lives and symbols operate at the edge of legality and beyond. This is not a new conversation. Hip-hop has always existed at that edge. From its very beginnings, hip-hop was a culture that emerged from communities that mainstream society had largely written off, that operated according to codes and values that the mainstream did not fully understand and often condemned. And the artists who came from those communities, the ones who were authentic, who did not sanitize their reality for broader appeal, have always been the ones who resonated most deeply with people who understood that reality from the inside. YoungBoy is in that tradition. He is, in many ways, the direct descendant of the artists before him who refused to compromise their authenticity. And the gravedigger chain is perhaps the most extreme example of that refusal to compromise. It is YoungBoy saying, "This is my world, these are my values, these are my people, and I will not pretend otherwise for anyone." Whether that is something to admire or something to be concerned about is a conversation that everyone who engages with YoungBoy's music and persona has to have with themselves. There is no clean answer. There is no simple verdict. There is only the complexity of a human being who exists in an extraordinary and extraordinarily difficult set of circumstances, operating according to the code that those circumstances produced. What is undeniable at the end of this entire conversation is the cultural weight of the gravedigger chain. It has become, in a very short period of time, one of the most discussed and most analyzed symbols in hip-hop. People who have never been to Baton Rouge, who have never experienced anything close to the life that YoungBoy and his circle navigate, they are talking about this chain. They are trying to understand it. They are drawn to it, even if they cannot fully articulate why. And the reason they are drawn to it is the same reason people have always been drawn to authentic symbols of real experience. It feels true. It feels earned. It feels like it means something in a world where a lot of things are performative and hollow. The gravedigger chain means something. And in 2024 and beyond, meaning, real, undeniable, costly meaning, is rare enough to stop people in their tracks. So let's bring it all together. The gravedigger chain is not just jewelry, it is the physical manifestation of YoungBoy's entire value system. It represents his relationship with death, which is intimate and unflinching and informed by a life lived in proximity to it. It represents his standard for loyalty, which is not just about being around or being supportive, but about being willing to go all the way when the moment demands it. It represents his circle, not the broad circle of people who call themselves NBA, not the extended network of fans and associates, but the innermost ring, the people who have proven themselves in the specific, irreversible way that the chain's name implies. The people who have reportedly received it, Lil Tim, Herm, Ben 10, and the others whose names circulate in this conversation, are not just YoungBoy's associates. They are, according to the narrative that surrounds this chain, the people who have literally stood on business in the most serious possible sense. They are the people who, in YoungBoy's world, have dug the graves. Whether you take that literally or figuratively is between you and your interpretation, but the symbolism is deliberate, the selection is deliberate, the exclusivity is deliberate, and the weight of what it means to receive one is deliberate. YoungBoy created something with the gravedigger chain that no stylist, no jeweler, no label executive, and no marketing consultant could have designed, because it is real. It comes from a real place, it goes to real people for real reasons, and it communicates real things that only the people who actually know understand fully. That is the definition of authenticity, and that is why, even if you have complicated feelings about what the chain might represent, even if the implications make you uncomfortable, as they probably should, you cannot dismiss it. You cannot ignore it. You have to engage with it because it is one of the most honest things in the entire culture right now. And that is the dark secret behind the gravedigger chain. It is not just that the requirements are extreme. It is that the requirements are real. This is not a game. This is not a bit. This is YoungBoy's actual world, and the gravedigger chain is its most honest symbol. And now you know everything.